In alcohols, we have the functional group of OH attached to the alkane group. Okay, so you can see here we have a methanol as an alcohol. In methanol, OH group, which is our functional group in alcohols, is attached to the CH3, and the name come up with methanol. In alcohols, as you see, our suffix is OL. So we have the name of the methane, right? Because it's one carbon, and but we end the E, like the end of the methane, and add OL to it. It's gonna be methanol. How we name it, the compounds, the nomenclature of alcohols. We always, as we did for alkane, alkene, and alkynes, we, we start to find the longest chain of carbon, and then as you see here, we have this alcohol. Why we have alcohol here? Because there is OH functional group to the alkane structure. Then we find the longest chain. How we find the longest chain? We find the longest chain that the longest chain should have the OH group in it. So let's find the longest chain in this structure. Here, that's our longest chain. So pay attention. Our longest chain of carbon should have the OH attached to it. Okay. Then we start numbering. From which side do you think we should start numbering? We should start numbering from the side that OH group gets the lower number, or the carbon that is attached to OH group should get the lower numbering. So let's do it here. So we start numbering from the left side. So it's gonna be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. So then if there is a substituents, we should write them down as an alphabetical order. Let's do some examples of alcohols. What's the longest chain here in the A? We should start numbering from which side, guys? From the right side, because I reached the OH group sooner. It doesn't matter if I have other methyl group in the compound. The important part is that we should reach the OH sooner when we number these compounds. So I start numbering from the right side. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then when we want to write them down, we should make sure follow the alphabetical order. So it's going to be for methyl, because in the carbon 4 I have a methyl group or a branch. Then in the 2, carbon 2, I have the alcohol group. So it's going to be 2-pentanol. Make sure that OL should be attached to my parent name, which is my 5 carbon. Pentanol. It means that in my carbon 2, I have OH group, right? On carbon 2, I have a OH group, so I should write it down. If I have in which carbon I have a OH group, it's gonna be 2-pentanol. Okay, so let's do the second one. In the second one, we start one from the side that I have the carbon that has a OH group, and we do here the clockwise numbering because I reach the branch sooner. So it's gonna be, we go clockwise here, and I start with the branches. It's gonna be 2-methyl cyclohexanol. Whenever we have a cyclo, we don't need to write the number, for the that it has a OH in it, because we should always anyway start with the OH, the carbon that has a OH in the cyclos. What about the third one? We had it in the previous slides, right? So we start from the left side. So in the carbon 2, I have an OH group. So I have 2, I should emphasize on it, that I have in carbon 2 OH. So I said 2-heptanol. 2 on carbon 2, I have an OH group. It's gonna be 2-heptanol, and the OH is gonna be my part of the parent name. It's gonna be 2-heptanol. I add OL to it. 2-heptanol. In the D, I start from the right side because my OH group is starting from carbon 1. Then we first start with branches, 2,2-dimethyl, 1-propanol. The same that we did with alkenes and alkynes. If your carbon 1 has an OH group, you don't need to. If you find in the book that is they don't write the 1, is totally fine. It's gonna be 2,2-dimethyl 1-propanol or 2,2-dimethyl propanol. Let's go to when we have a more than one OH group. We make sure we treat them the same as we did for the regular alcohols when we had only one OH. But when we have a 2 OH or 3 OHs, we should end up with di when we have a 2 OH, and when we have a 3 OH, we should end up with triol. Another important thing is that we should make sure that our main group or the main chain should have the OH group in them. For example, in here, we should make sure this is my main branch, the 3 carbon, and I should start from the right side. It's gonna be 1,2-propan-diol. Here, I should have my main group, should have my all OH group in it, and doesn't matter if it should start from left or right here, because there is no difference. So it's gonna be 1,2,3-propan-triol. Alcohols are classified as primary, secondary, or tertiary. This concept is very important, guys, because you need to know what type of alcohols you have for the specific reactions to see what happens if you have, for example, primary alcohols in the reaction. What happens if you have a secondary alcohol in the reaction? What happens if you have a tertiary alcohol in the reaction? So it's very important to know what type of alcohol do you have in the reactions. In the alcohols, how we can find if the alcohol is primary, secondary, or tertiary alcohol? You should look at the carbon that is directly attached to the OH group, this carbon that I'm arrowing to. If this carbon has two hydrogen attached to it, we call this compound primary alcohol. In another hand, if to the carbon that is directly connected to OH, so the first thing you're gonna do, you're gonna find the carbon that is directly attached to the OH. Then, if there is any hydrogen attached to it, here we have one, right? It's gonna be secondary alcohol. Then, in the third one, if you have no hydrogen attaches to the carbon that is directly attached to OH, we have a tertiary alcohol. Let's talk about ethers. The functional group of an ether is an oxygen atom bonded to two carbon atoms. Look at this, guys. If you see that you have an oxygen in the molecule and around the oxygen you have two carbon, we call it ether. Look at this picture, guys. You have a red circle, which is oxygen, and you have two dark circles around it, which are carbons. This is an ether structure, guys. So whenever you find the oxygen and two carbon attaches to it, we call it ether. It's possible to other carbons, there are more carbons attached. It's totally fine. Like here, you see that we have this basic structure, O, one carbon in the left side, one carbon in the right side, that's ether. But it's possible more carbons attached to that carbon that is attached to oxygen. We have the a common naming of ethers. That's we just had some the common naming in the previous slide. How you do that? You just put the name of the alkyl groups in the both side of the oxygen, but it should be in the alphabetical order. For example, third butyl methyl ether. Well, for example, you know that for the alphabetical order, B is gonna be considered in alphabetical order, not T. And in here, M in the methyl group. In the IUPAC naming, which is the second naming, we look at the longest chain of carbon. So that would be my root name. And then the smaller group that is attached to oxygen, we call it as alkoxy group. Let's do the bottom ones, guys. In the bottom one, first, I want to tell you the common naming. As I said, we have two alkyl groups in the both sides of oxygen, right? And we just name the two alkyl groups, but we should write them down based on the alphabetical order. Here we have two ethyl groups in the two sides. So it's gonna be diethyl, and we should end up with ether in the common naming. So it's gonna be diethyl ether. What about IUPAC naming? Again, we should make sure we go with alphabetical order when we want to write them down. So it's going to be ethoxy. So one would be my chain or the subsequent or branch. The other one would be my parent name that I'm gonna name my compound based on the root of it. It's gonna be ethoxyethane. Let's do the right side. Methyl methyl ether. So we write down based on alphabetical order. Cyclohexyl, we look at the what groups are around the oxygen, and I should write them down based on the alphabetical order. Cyclohexyl methyl ether. That's the common name for it. What about the IUPAC naming? Is going to be the shortest group is gonna be methoxy here, but the longest one, which has 6 carbon in it, is cyclohexane. It's gonna be my root name. Is going to be methoxy cyclohexane. That would be my IUPAC naming. We have also cyclic ethers. For example, here we have the 2 example of them, ethylene oxide and tetrahydrofuran. You don't need to know the name of them if it's not in your book. Okay, I just want the naming that is of the cyclic ethers that you can see in your book when you study your book. Let's do some examples, guys. These are what, guys? The first 3 one in the top. These are alcohols, right? Why they are alcohols in top? Because they have OH in them, right? These are alcohol. They have functional group of OH. So what's the longest chain here? We should first find the longest chain. The longest chain is gonna be here. I put the cube around it. And we should start from left side or right side numbering. From the left side. Why? Because I reached the carbon that has a OH sooner. So what would be the name of it? 2, I should make sure say that on carbon 2 I have a OH group, 2, and it has 7 carbon in it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 2 heptanol. The second one. What about the second one? The second one, my longest chain is 3 carbon. I should start from the right side. Why? Because I reached the OH sooner. Is going to be 2,2-dimethyl 1-propanol. If you come up in the book with the name of 2,2-dimethyl propanol is also correct. The third one is going to be what? I should start from the carbon that has OH attached to it. Is gonna be 1, 2, 3. In carbon 3, I have a isopropyl. So it says 3-isopropyl. I go based on the alphabetical order, and I know that the branch should come always sooner before the root. 3-isopropyl, cyclo or cyclohexanol. What about the 3 compound in the bottom? These are ethers, right? Why these are ethers, guys? Because I have oxygen, there is a carbon in the left side of it, and there's a carbon in the right side of it. This is ether, guys. What about this one? This is also ether. There is a carbon in the right side of it. There is a carbon in the left side of it. Here is a carbon too. What about this one? This is also ether. There is oxygen. There is a carbon in the left side, and there is a carbon in the right side of the oxygen. So let's start with the left compound. I want now to talk about the IUPAC naming. When you have a more complicated compounds, it's better to write in the form of the IUPAC of them. So where is the root name? The root name is the one that has a more compound on it. So here I have 3 carbon in the root, which is in the right side of the oxygen. It has 3. But in the right side, I have only 2 carbon. So this is my root name of the ether. On carbon 2, I have a methyl group. Then in the right side, I have a ethoxy. When I write them down, I should go based on alphabetical order. It's gonna be ethoxy. This is ethoxy. To methyl propane. Ethoxy to methyl propane. What about this one, guys? So it would be methoxycyclopentane, because there is a methoxy or in the compound. What about the last one? What's the longest chain, guys? First, we should find the longest chain here. The longest chain is 3 carbon. Either you can choose this one as the longest chain, has 3 carbon, or this one that I'm pointing to is gonna be the longest chain of carbon or the root name. But when we write them down, we should go based on the alphabetical order. So it's gonna be on carbon 2, I have an ethoxy group. 2 on carbon 2, I have an ethoxy group. Make sure when you want to write down, to write it down as a branch, this ethoxy group. 2 ethoxy, 2 methyl propane. So I write it down based on alphabetical order. 1, 2, 3. When we number the carbons, 1, 2, 3. So it's gonna be 2 ethoxy, 2 methyl propane. Let's talk about thiols. Thiols have the functional group of SH. I have talked about the functional group before. Functional group is a group that makes a compound specific. For example, in alcohols, you saw that we have OH in them. So when we have OH in a compound, we have alcohol. In thiols, when we have a SH group in them, like in the bottom pictures, you see that there is a SH group in them. Then we call this compound thiol. How we name thiols? The name of thiols is the same as alcohols. How we name alcohols? The only difference is that we should add a suffix of thiol in them, okay, at the end. Let's name this compound in the left side. So from which side we should start numbering, guys? From the right side, from the carbon in the right side. So it's gonna be the longest chain is 2 carbon, and I start from the right side, 1 and 2. Make sure, guys, when you want to find the longest chain, never ever put the functional group part of it if there is no carbon in it, okay? If there is no carbon in it. So only carbons should be the part of the longest chain because we call it longest chain of carbon, okay? Here we call it ethane thiol. So we add the thiol at the end as a suffix. Ethane thiol. We don't need to put ethane 1 thiol because it's already is carbon 1. In carbon 1 we have SH group. So we don't need to put the ethane 1 thiol. What about the second guy, second one? We start again from the right side numbering. The longest chain has 3 carbon in it. 1, 2, and 3. On carbon 2 I have a branch. So I start with the branches. 2 methyl. On carbon 2 I have a methyl group. On carbon 1 I have a SH group. It's going to be 2 methyl, 1 propan, thiol. Here is also the common name.